when it comes to abortion, right? And people have their views on it, their take on it, and how they, all that good stuff. And of course, they'll say, as men, you don't have the right to speak on that because you're not a woman. This is my stance, and you made a point, and we got to go there. We got to go there because I've heard stories about people who were promiscuous or had their first time and they got pregnant, and you know they end up, their parents was like, they came home, they said, oh no, you having that baby because you have to learn. People say, well, it's a child, and you put that child through all this. This is my, and I know there are people who grew up in poverty and they feel like they don't want to put no child through that and all this stuff. And I hear you when you say that, because at the end of the day, I have my views, but I'm open to all perspectives, right? And things do happen.
Yeah.
But what would have happened if, hypothetically, I don't go to this church no more. This is my church I went to when I was in St. Louis, right? Okay. And my pastor, he was a rape baby. And so some people, and I remember my sixth grade teacher had these different scenarios. It was so crazy. She actually passed away last year. RIP to her. And I remember she had said, and she named a few different people, but she named when the past one, she was like, his mom was raped at 15. And what if she would have gotten an abortion? She would have never, just said, I'm not having that baby, got an abortion, never had the baby. Now I know what you're thinking. What you guys, what you're selling. Now look, I know you all are on social media every day, especially people who trying to sell a business. You trying to promote your stuff. You trying to spread your message. You got the calling. You got the word from the Lord. All that good stuff, right? But you don't feel like it. You don't have the time to promote the social media. You don't have the time to create the content calendars. You don't have the time for none of that, right? So that is where my new package comes in. And this is called the Trust Builder Package. All right. So this is for those of you who want to create great social media content, whether it's on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, YouTube. All right. And you need somebody to do your captions, descriptions for you that are high SEO, that'll get you pushed out there to the masses and to find your personal development audience, because you are more than likely a personal development influencer. So who does this cater to? Coaches and consultants, faith-based leaders, wellness experts, authors, podcasters, motivational speakers, educators, mental health advocates, you name it. All of you who are trying to see the betterment of your community. All right, this package is for you. All right, hit me up in the DM, email me, reach out on the Nazio platform, and I'll hook you up. What's going on, everybody? We are back for part 5. Part 5 of Social Media Reloaded. And y'all, I keep it honest. I kind of said that this week's live stream. I said, I'm over it. I'm over. I ain't gonna lie to you. And that's okay. It's okay to be over it. A lot of times I think that we as just creators, we kind of like act like everything is just like, oh, hunky dory. I don't know if that's the right phrase I want to use, but we can get overwhelmed at times. It can get a lot, especially the podcast world. And that's why I encourage, especially as I start, my clients and the people that I've worked with this whole podcast stuff, to do this podcast in seasons, because what happens when you do get burnout? And obviously you can do, I tell people all the time, you can always do 100 episode in 11 and then take tell your people, we're going to take some weeks off. But I just feel like, I don't know. Because I started my podcast in a time where podcast wasn't a thing, and I modeled it after TV. So I think that's partially why I do mine in seasons too. But, everybody's different. Now, if you tuned in last week, shout out to my boy Jonty. That episode was called Social Media and Conspiracy Theories. We briefly touched on politics, and I said I didn't want to go too hard last week because we definitely said some things, and I was like, no, I want to save that for this week. So and I got the perfect person for that, because I'm a little selfish, I'm not gonna lie. When he did this episode, he did an episode with me in 20 whatever year that was, where it was season 6. To this day, that audio episode still gets streamed. He did a live stream where not only the episode itself did decent, but all of the clips did well. So I don't know, something he magic, I guess. So I'm gonna be selfish, and I got to bring him back. We got to get the numbers going. So let me get into this week's meme. The meme reads: is it truly normal to cut off someone because of their different stance on politics, or is that all by design? The inspiration for this episode comes from just conversations we've had about politics, online. And, with him, what I will say is, and he told me, he gave his stance on a few different occasions, and he will always, follow, I'm not trying to disrespect you. I said, you're not disrespecting me. I really, to be quite frank, when it comes to politics, everybody knows my stance. I don't really care. But in the same breath, I'm still aware of what's going on, and I still can have an opinion. Just like everyone, I feel like we pick and choose, and not him, but I feel like we pick and choose when we want to abide by laws. And so sometimes I think that when people say they have a right to freedom of speech, just like they have a right, I have one as well. And I don't believe that I should be silenced because I don't think like everybody else. Similar to where didn't your people or our people fight for that right, for the black people to also speak? And so when it's like, well, when that black person doesn't agree with us, okay, well, then their word, we're going to ask for his personal definition on later. And y'all know, if you know the word, Me personally, inspiration for this episode, I was cut off over the election, giving an opinion. Again, I would have don't care who would have won. I still would have reposted the meme. And the meme read, if you're cutting off people over the election, maybe you're not as mature as you thought you was. And this person, who in my opinion, had been looking for a reason. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. That's really my opinion on a lot of these cutoffs with elections. They were looking for a reason, but we'll talk about that a little later. And also, my inspiration for this episode comes from the fact that I think that a lot of times we misinterpret playing devil's advocate with alliance. You see what I'm saying? And I think that sometimes we think at that, and here's my goal. Every episode has a goal. My goal overall is to get people to, as I always, think outside the box, be open to different perspectives. The reason this podcast even started. But also, we can't be fueled by emotions. It makes sense for emotion to get the best of you, especially when you're passionate about something. But I'm sorry, this podcast is catered to me. And as a man, you can't be overly emotional and her overly emotional too. Yeah, both can't be overly emotional all the time. Things happen, but we can't always be like that. All right, y'all. Now, let's jump into this happy hour real quick. Shouldn't take long. I ain't got too much to rant about. But this is a topic that kind of aligns with what we're talking about today, but not really, because it's something that happened that I really want to speak on. So today, I was in the gym, been in the gym for the first. But seriously, I was listening to Future's old album, mixtape, came out, I remember, fall 2014. That was my junior year of college. And, I was listening to it, and people always talk about like certain albums and mixtapes are classics. And that was definitely when he was in his era. And what I will say about that album, that mixtape was, and which I put on my notes and I said on Instagram was, people don't use depression as, they used to take their depression and turn it into art. And I think we don't do that anymore. And I'm not saying how to tell nobody how to feel, because as someone who was diagnosed with depression at one point in my life, and as someone who was an advocate for speaking and talking things out and getting help and, just being vocal with somebody, I really think that especially most people who go through depression, not always, but a lot of times, are really creative. And I think that when creative people go through depression, I think that along with all those things, you can do multiple things. You don't have to pick one or the other, growing your faith, with, relationship with God, talking to a therapist. And I think along with that, we need to get back to creating. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm going to create my way out of depression, but I do believe it will help. And also, a lot of times, he was crying for help on that mixtape, and he was going over the fact that he lost, I don't want to put her in it because then she gonna listen to this and be like, nah, I'm in this. But he was crying over his ex. And with that, he was, crying out for help, and also making a masterpiece because he made a masterpiece. So I think that we need to get back to, if we stopped, we need to get back to creating when we are depressed. You hear so many creators, painters and YouTubers and TikTokers and rappers and singers, they make some of the best pieces from what they've been through. And I think that even one of my mixtapes, my podcast mixtapes I did, or was that an album? That might have been an album that I did some years ago. Bold, it was 2021, season 5. I was literally chronicling things that I was going through in podcast format. And that was the first time I ever told a story. And I was just chronicling where my life was in that moment. And just each episode centered around something that was happening. And, I think we need to get back to that because your testimony is not just for you. So, so many people who hear what they're going through, you know how many, I almost caught myself, how many men heard that Monster album when they was crying over their ex too? You know what I'm saying? So just a little light humor that I wanted to get into before we get into today's episode, because I feel like it's gonna go there a little bit. So let me introduce my guest, y'all. He has been patient with me. We've been missing each other back and forth. First time it was my fault. Then I think it was my fault again. And then he had something come up, and then it was my fault again today. But we're here. So let me go ahead and introduce him, and let's get started. My guy.
What's going on?
How you living?
Living good. How you doing, Izzy?
I'm good. It is a new year, and said this at an event I threw. A lot of people didn't make it, but we did.
Yeah,
you just got to be honest. A lot of people didn't make it. So obviously, my online people can see you. But can you tell the people what's your name, where you're from, and where do you live now?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's AmRock here, filmmaker, editor, podcast host of the HL podcast. Izzy, I appreciate you for being on this past year. Definitely gonna have you on again this year. Shout out to my guys, Dez and DJ No Name. But yeah, right now I'm in the DMV, in between Baltimore, Maryland, and Richmond, VA. Spent, and from Jersey originally, but yeah, HL podcast, we talk about a lot of different things. I bring up a lot of different things on my page. But yeah, politics is one of those things. Not politics specifically, just I feel like politics is like everybody has to be aware of that. So when I say politics is like, I'm not trying to make it like, oh, that's my specialty. I think everybody needs to be aware of that. I just, happen to think that it's very important and have no problem talking about it. And so what's up?
Let's do it. Okay, so you talk about being a filmmaker. I'm all for that. I'm not gonna say I can't. I'm like, I ain't made a film, but I definitely know I could be a part of writing one for sure. Directing, maybe recording, but definitely maybe producing, directing, and writing. I know that for a fact. So when it comes to filmmaking and when it comes to politics, do you think that there's a way in which you could maybe have already create a film or a project that would center around politics? Maybe something that would, I'm getting the idea. You remember Chris Rock when he had that movie, Good Hair? I think that's what it was called.
Good Hair.
It was basically like it was a documentary about black women in their hair and just going into like wigs and weaves and stuff. Do you think that this economy and this world today could use something like that, but in political form, where you would interview different black people from different walks of life and put them on camera, ask them, who did you vote for? What is your take on politics? Maybe people who are like, I don't really care about it. Then the people like me, I don't care, but I'm well aware, then the other ones who are like, What do you think something like that would be?
Yeah. Doesn't that happen all the time on social media for real? Like, aren't we recording, our thoughts constantly? Whether that's a podcast, whether that's just live streaming all day. I mean, we're constantly directing our own movies at this point, right? You got a camera like most of us do by access of phone or laptop, you're documenting your life, you know, and you're documenting. So yeah, a lot of us are already in content creating, filmmaking, editing, all of that's bunched into one. But a full out film, yeah, absolutely. I think that's actually a great idea, to go around and ask people, you know, their political views, or you know how they. At this point, how you voted is neither here nor there. It's how do you still feel now, right?
Yeah.
Now that we've had a year of Trump and Mega, you know, in office, how do you feel now? Even if, you know, for some black people who may have voted for Trump or support him or what have you, how do you feel now, with everything that's going on? I think that's the biggest question. But yeah, I think something like that could definitely take place. That's actually a good idea.
Okay, you can steal it. So with your platform, you talk about a little bit of everything. You already touched on that. So, and I'm kind of there as well. And I got something to tell you after we get off, because I'm not going to tell them.
Okay.
But how can you tell what deserves a mic and what deserves the mic or the conversation and what doesn't?
How can you tell? I don't know. I mean, for me, you know, I also think of myself as somewhat of a curator in a sense, right? And piecing things together and seeing. I don't know if I'm sure you listen to music. It's like when you listen to music, you can hear a specific sound,
Yeah.
and you can then pinpoint that sound to another sound from another song, and then like it's like you DJing and you transition into that song, right? It's just, you know, it was like editing, right? Like when you edit, you know, you might cut some things out so you have a smooth transition. So it's just looking at it from that standpoint and going, oh yeah, that's what's going on right now. We need to pinpoint and highlight that, or we need to put the camera on that, or we need to put the zoom on that. So yeah, I would say that's the way I look at it, right? Like who's really who's really fired up, who's really, you know, talking, or making a statement that everybody needs to hear, right? Or that I'm, you know, in this day and age that we might think is a reel, or we might think is a short, or what have you, that's going to garner the necessary attention, not the clickbait attention, but the necessary attention. Because we talk about real shit, you know, as you know, on the podcast, and you know, unfortunately, it's like it's always, you know, clickbait or different things like that that get, you know, the views. And so what we just try to highlight is, yeah, I mean, if we are talking about specific things, you know, try to highlight a different perspective and put that out there instead of the perspective that you may already be hearing.
Yeah. And you know, and that was funny. I asked that because this week on my live stream, you need to come back, by the way. But I obviously have to recap the episode. But you know, when the season is on air, I only do 2 topics. So it was between Keith Powers being sober for a year, Boosie being pardoned by Donald Trump, and then Offset and Selena Powell. So I definitely said I want to talk about Keith Powers being sober and use it as a way to promote sobriety. And you know, even I tell people all the time, some of y'all are gonna drink to the day you die. That's your business. But I still believe in healthy breaks. And a lot of times the world doesn't always push that. We're seeing a lot more of that lately, even in just the regular real world and just celebrity culture of people who are either going sober permanently or taking long breaks.
Right.
But I went with, instead of Boosie and Donald Trump, I went with talking about Offset and Selena Powell. Now, I don't know if you know who Selena Powell is. I know you know who Offset is.
Yeah.
Selena Powell is a known she's a known person who owns her sexuality and known for being a I'm not gonna call her that, but you know, people may say a 304. And she basically recorded her and Offset fell asleep at the scene of the crime, allegedly. And she recorded them like, oh yeah, we just made a sex tape, and said, you know, what did she say? She said, we just made a sex tape. He was louder than me, something like that. Now, people might say, well, you went with that because of clickbait. That's actually not why I went with it. I went with that topic because I wanted to promote this is what happens when you keep letting lust win. Because here's the thing. He didn't hit some probably millions at this point. But the thing is, that's risky. Like you, and not even like for STD wise. I mean, I hope she clean. I believe so. But it's just the stance. I went from the angle of y'all, you really can't be trusting people. So what made you was that comfortable that you fell asleep at this lady house? And granted, you ain't with Cardi no more, so you ain't technically cheating, you know. So, but it's
Right.
just like you know, I had to just to show you that even these celebrities get caught. These male celebrities get caught on making lustful decisions and getting caught lacking, and he got caught lacking. And it's also explained on the live stream. And I said, you know, God gives us warnings, you know, and He'll never just give you one. It's always a bunch of them. So it's like again, if it was word of mouth, he could have just, you know. But now he's literally caught live on on candid camera, sleep at this lady hotel or his hotel, who knows? But you know. So I talked about that from that angle, just to be like, look, you seeing it with all these people, it could be you.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get into the meat and potatoes, I have to ask, where are you mentally and emotionally right now outside of the podcast?
Okay. All right.
Okay.
I mean, you know, okay. You know, you have the luxury of working, getting a paycheck at least, especially right now. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But of course, there's always improvement to be made, and within all of us. And so, yeah, I mean, okay, am I where I fully want to be right now? No. Um, do I believe that my people are in the place where they need to be? No. You know, is this world? You know, no. It's not. You know, like for me, um, I feel deeply, and so about just everything. Um, and so in a time where, yeah, I mean, like a decade ago, like, you know, yeah, even I think when it was a decade ago when Trump was just coming into power or what have you, like things were, you know, um, things were okay. All right. I think, yeah, that was the end of Obama's era and going into Trump. Things were okay. And here we are a decade later, and we should be, as a whole, people should be better well off, and we're not. You know, being in any city really, but specifically in Baltimore, there is still a heavy homeless community, unfortunately. And you know, it just sucks. Like, you know, sometimes you may not be able to help, you know, simply just provide $1, $5. You know, it's, you know, especially if you don't have it or if you don't have it on you, right? It just sucks that we still are a society that has homeless people, or that, you know, have, you know, children, just abandoned and orphaned, or, you know, it just sucks, you know. And
Yeah.
so, you know, you feel all those things on top of your everyday work politics that you have to deal with, especially as Black men. Um, Dealing with relationships, not just, you know, with your your partner, significant other, whomever, your spouse, but your family. You know, and as you get older, you realize that family shit is real, right? Like, you got siblings and all that, like those relationships and all that, it's real. You either gonna be close or you not, right? And so that's hard to deal with sometimes. Um, and so, yeah, you know, it's just a lot of things that's going on, not just in everyday life, but just in the world. And yeah, for somebody like me who feels deeply, you feel all of that, especially right now. You feel all of it.
Right. Okay. Okay. This is for anybody who think they want to start a podcast. So is it you? Do you think you want to start a podcast? Cool. Let's be real. Watch this. So we don't need another podcast that sound like everybody else, right? We got enough of them. We're gonna talk about those today. But saying the same stuff with no structure, no message, no plan, that ain't good. Now that's where I come in. Me, right here, Head Honcho. All right. So I have a new podcast package. It's called the Legacy Launchpad. Now, what is this? This is for podcasters who fall in the personal development influencer space. So who is that? That would be obviously personal development. That's pretty broad, but coaches and speakers, Christian-based influencers, you know, faith influencers, you know, maybe a pastor, a church, any type of course creator, education, mental health, wellness, nutritionist, all that good stuff. If you are trying to help the betterment of other people, fitness too, then this is for you. I will help you build your podcast from the ground up. This includes toning up, giving you the message, your niche, your show structure, the episode outlines, the intros, outros, descriptions, all of you. Show up to record and I build your legacy. If you're ready to stop playing, let's get it cracking. All right, so I have a few words for you, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind, and there is no right or wrong answer. Are you ready?
Okay, let's go.
All right, social media,
A trap,
politics,
bullshit,
idol,
X and Garvey,
coon.
white trash,
All right, so the definition of social media: websites and applications that enable users to create, share, and interact content with one another in the virtual communities and networks. Politics: the activities, actions, and policies used to govern a society, including the distribution and exercise of power, authority, and decision making within a state or community. Idle, an object or person concept that is excessive that is given excessive administration, devotion, or reverence, often to the point that it replaces higher values, principles, or priorities. And then coon, a racial slur historically used to demean and dehumanize Black people. And modern usage is sometimes used within communities to describe a Black person perceived as betraying or undermining Black collective's interests, though it remains offensive and harmful. All right, now let's jump into the next segment, which is what does this have to do with mental health? All right, so the first question I want to ask is, have you ever held back on an opinion because you knew it would cost followers, relationships, or opportunities?
oh hell yeah. Yeah, I think I would imagine most of us have in some capacity, right? But yeah, definitely. Just if especially I just spoke about work politics. For everybody that works a 9 to 5, um, you deal with that constantly. Um, you know, uh, in this social media age, you deal with that constantly. Sometimes I'll comment or choose not to comment on certain posts because I just know like what I would say, people are just going to attack. And sometimes I don't give a fuck. I just say it anyway, and I get the
Right.
notifications that people are attacking. But sometimes no, because also too, unfortunately, we're dealing with a lot of people who, and I'm not going to sit here and say I'm the smartest and brightest and most informed person, but a lot of people are just uncultured, are not informed. They're just spewing out information they think is right. Um, and it's completely false or wrong, or they don't remember what they said 2 shows ago, 2 weeks ago. They don't want to be corrected. Like Dr. Umar Johnson, for example, doesn't like when people correct him, so he'll just unblock him like he did me. All right. And that's not to put that, I'm just saying. But yeah, it's we deal with that constantly, especially Black men in this country, right, where they try to silence our voices at any chance they get. Sometimes you just go, you know what, it's not even worth it to say anything. Let them be ignorant, let them be uneducated, let them be stupid, or whatever, misinformed. And you just try to, as podcasters like we are, just try to articulate it in, through our message that we have on our platforms. But yeah, constantly.
So I know your answer to this, so I'm going to answer it for you, and we're just going to kind of go from there. The next question was, do you think social media has turned into performance over actual problem solving? And the answer is yes. A lot of people pander to their audiences based on what it is, and they just gonna just say what they think is best. And honestly, some of these people who are being controversial in some cases, where you think they're just going against the grain because they truly believe that, they're going against the grain just for the clout. And it's just hard to see who believes what. One thing that I speak on politics on a live stream, and with another project, I'm hesitant on that. I may have to, but I'm more so just like, when it comes to politics, like I said, it's one of those topics my dad has always tried to get me to go down, because he was just like, you're a critical thinker, but I'm sorry, there are other topics I feel like deserve my critical thinking. And not saying that I don't give it to that as well, but not just on a regular basis, because I just think the other topics that I go through are for me.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there are people who love politics. I think I tell you all the time, we live in a world where people are making $1 million to do what they love.
Yeah.
And so anything I encourage people on TikTok, on this podcast, this platform, and just Instagram, I say, look, what do you like? Stop trying to do what makes the most sense and what makes the most money. What do you like? Because I promise you there's a lane for it. I use an example on that TikTok video where our parents and grandparents, oh, y'all playing them games, I ain't doing nothing for y'all. There are people making millions of dollars to play video games, uploading walkthrough for video games. So they didn't see that coming. You know, I think I say all the time that generation missed innovation because they ain't got it. They just don't. But when it comes to problem solving, I don't think people really want to hear each other. And that's also one thing I hope with this episode that at least, listen, you don't have to agree with me. They don't have to agree with you. At least we can just say, you know what? Okay, we can agree to disagree. But I think that you have to, if someone doesn't agree with you, we have to be open to saying, let me educate you. And then, even then, you might say, well, maybe that ain't the education for them. You know, maybe it's something they ain't ready to receive. Maybe it's something that, who knows, you could come out later and say you just never know. But people need to be open to where people are at the moment.
Right.
So let me get into the first point. Political polarization is stressing Americans out. So according to American Psychological Association, when politics becomes part of personal identity, people experience constant psychological tension, trying to defend beliefs instead of processing them. This erodes mental clarity and self-trust over time. A second post says how politics took over a sense of self. This is from The Atlantic. It says political identity can fragment a person's sense of self, forcing them to perform loyalty rather than think critically. That internal split creates emotional strain and confusion about who you actually are versus who you're expected to be. So this is where we go down the lane of the whole groupthink. And I really should have added that as a definition as well. I mean, it's self-explanatory, but just for the sake of the conversation. When it comes to groupthink, and this ain't even just politics, me in general, I've never been a person that agree with everybody else. Do I think that some people do that on purpose? Yes. Some people just see what everybody's saying and they just go against it on purpose. I think that's a good task to do when you want to exercise your critical thinking, that muscle. I think that's a good task to do with that.
That's fair. I said that's fair. Yeah.
But sometimes I think that we just need to take a look at things from a bigger angle. And I got some points I'm gonna make as we go along. But what is your take on groupthink in the Black community?
I think of a difference of opinion, right? A different perspective, of course, is always necessary, right? But also as a collective, we have to come to a consensus on how are things going to go for us as a Black community as a whole. And everybody can bring their different perspectives and opinions. But again, at the end of the day, we have to come to 5 bullet points, 10 bullet points, whatever the case may be, 50 bullet points, some type of collective on what we want for ourselves, how we want to progress. And so, again, you can have your different opinions and perspective, but let's keep the main thing, as they say, and understand that there's still one common goal. If you're still not for or part of that common goal, you got to go. No matter, again, different perspectives and opinions are warranted and are open. But how do we get that condensed to, okay, this is what we need to do to effectively move forward as a whole for our people? And so I think that's what those group think chats, all of that, whatever, need to be about. And yeah, if you need to have a curator or a host, mediate that, so to speak, to get everybody to reel everybody in, that's fine. Sometimes you need that. But again, bring it down to, the main thing and keep it in the main thing, even though we may have a difference of opinion.
So when you say, and I agree, but because at the same time, so what 2 questions, and this is just me being a realist. Do you think, in all honesty, the black community will ever be on one accord?
Here in America, to be on, to be honest, it's there's been so much damage. It's going to be hard. Do I, in my heart of hearts, do I have faith? Sure. But I know it's not going to be an easy road. And the path that this country is going down now, as much as people are upset about it, and certainly, I'm not rooting for Trump or Mega or anything like that. But understand that this is happening for a reason, right? The exposure of how flawed the system and the government is, and how easily, it could be taken over, and I could do whatever, all these different things. It's exposing a lot. It's exposing what needs to be exposed, especially for us. How I look at it is, going back to what Dr. Martin Luther King was quoted as saying after the 1964 Civil Rights Act was passed. I believe, I forget who he told, may have been Jesse Jackson, somebody, but he said, or Andrew Young, he said that to them that my fear now is that, and I'm paraphrasing somewhat, but my fear is that I have just walked black people into a burning building or burning house, in the sense of, or segregation, we forget we were fine, right? That's why we got all these documentaries about these black towns being destroyed and this and that. That's for a reason, because we were actually doing all right being separated. And how have we done since integration? Not to say that all of it has been bad, but 50-50. I mean, let's be real. And that's, and 64 is now, what, 60 years ago? And we're still at, 67 years ago, and we're still at 50-50. In the sense of the progress that should have been made and hasn't. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to think about. Go back to your question that you said I was going in. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's fine. I just basically asked, do you think that we will ever, as a black community, be on the one accord?
So, yeah, like I said, I believe that I have faith that can happen. But again, it's going to be a very long road. And I believe right now we are, going back to my point about the Civil Rights Act and what King said, I believe that right now black people are saying segregation, we don't want to be a part of what they got going on. And some of us still do, right? And so that's going to be the tug of war, right? There's so many black people who are integrated in white culture, and and white is right. We have politicians right now who are, spewing things like, like what Trump said, like with King. Trump has had better attendance than King at his speeches and different things like that. You have black people actually regurgitating that mess, black politicians. And so, from that standpoint, we are still very much divided in religion, financially, educational background. And I'm just talking about black people. I'm not talking about just as a whole. Black people are this as well. And so, that's why I'm saying, like, it's going to be a long road. It's not going to be easy. Can it be done? I believe it will. And I think what's happening right now in this country and what's happening with this administration is the start of that. Things are really getting exposed to how flawed the system is. And we as black people have to come together and say, look, this shit can't happen again. Right? Forget about what white people are talking about right now. Black people, we have to understand that this can't happen again. And the only way that we can override this is by coming together, right? I believe that's stated in the Bible, right? We all have to come together at some point for things to ultimately turn around. And if we do not, nothing's going to change here in this country. And history has shown us, when we come together, when we effectively and actively protest as a whole across the board, right? When we effectively, actively bring community together, bring our financial dollars together, bring our businesses together, we flourish. And so the history has shown that. So, hopefully, people are going back and looking at history and saying, hey, wait a minute, like these things happen. We can do this again. But yeah.
So you made a point I really like. I mean, like I said, I always think I like how you think. I've always have. Now, when it comes to, you made a comment about we are segregated. You made quite a few. I can't catch everything. We ain't got 3 hours, but we can bring it back. It's fine. But we can talk about that Black people are separated in so many areas, right? Financially, politically, religion. Now, one thing many people always talk about is they always say amongst people, you don't speak on politics, you don't speak on religion, you just don't do that. I challenge that because those are hard conversations. People cannot grow unless we have those hard conversations. And it was just, and a lot of times people say you just don't. And also maybe the I don't want to say warrior, but the boldness in me. Who are you to tell me what I can and can't talk about? That sounds like slavery to me. You better not talk about that. Like, that's how I feel. So why do we respect people's religion? And we're taught, okay, that's your religion. Yeah, I love that for you. Cool. But when it comes to politics, you gotta go. And that ain't even just Black people, because white people do it too. All the people do it. That's just universal. And my thought process, and maybe I'm a coon, I don't know, but I would like to see that Black people can say we have a difference of opinions on politics, but at least even if we don't agree, we can say I'm not cutting off that Black person for that, because to me, that's unity. To say I don't agree with you, but I can keep you around, because if I cut you off, then we divided somewhere else. We already divided light skin, dark skin. We already divided with this. So it's like, because them other cultures not divided, but everyone always sees us divided. Even with something else that I've seen that I hate, which, you opened up a conversation, Elaine, I didn't even plan to go on. We talk about segregation, right? And how we were integrated. There are so many Black men, especially, humiliated for growing up, which they can't control, around non-Blacks. And
As
they are
myself.
shamed, right? And are shamed and humiliated because they don't talk like this. They don't act like this. And they're, I've been around, I grew up around white people too for a different point. I started with the Blacks, and then went to whites around middle school, and then integrated, and then I went to HBCU. But I started with
similar path.
I started with the
niggas. Similar path. Yep.
But I remember it didn't seem like, they would make little jokes, but no one really in that culture would be like, oh, you can't hang with us because, or I'm going to make fun of you because you're a trailer park, or things like, I mean, we'll make fun of you. People make fun of you for whatever. But it wasn't like it is in the Black community, where it's kind of like, oh, you act white, I can't really, I feel like it was somewhat of a disconnect, but I just feel like in us, we're just taught to just divide. And it's like, it just seemed like it's been instilled in so many different areas. And am I reaching, or?
No, that goes back to slavery.
Yeah.
It goes back to slavery. From that standpoint, there has been a constant divide, right? During slavery, right, there, as documented in various movies, most recently, what was the movie called? The Woman King, all right, with Viola Davis, and John Boyega was in that, and a whole bunch of other people. They talk about how, Africans were involved in the slave trade, different African tribes. Your European nations were a little too friendly with those African tribes. Hey, we'll give you guns for your spices, and then also help us capture your enemy tribes, right? So the divide has already been there. And then even before slavery took place, right, Africa had its own nations. They had its own wars. They had its own, documented in Black Panther, for example, right? You're going to have that in every country, right? Or every continent. But the point was, let them deal with it, not you come and invade and colonize and do all the things, right? But all of that was going on. Right. But, and so to fast forward to slavery, I mean, white people did a number on us during slavery, plain and simple. It was about divide and conquer, brainwash. All right, in a lot of ways, today, a lot of people's perspective on religion is a brainwash, right? Jesus Christ being white, the biggest, like lie, in history, right? When he came from a place where people had color, it says that in the Bible, right? They talk about and they describe him. That's a black man, all right. So just different things like that. That divide comes from slavery, and as we progress, unfortunately, that was passed down from generations in very different ways too. It wasn't just oh, that nigga over there ain't shit and that nigga. No, it was various different ways on how that was passed down. And yes, we still feel the effects of that today, but it definitely, for this country with us, it started with slavery. Absolutely. And it's it's unfortunate that it's been passed down.
No, for sure. All right, now next point. It talks about why cutting people off over politics can backfire. This comes from Psychology Today. It says social disconnection disguised as conviction reduces support system and reinforces echo chambers. Over time, this weakens emotional resilience and increases mental rigidity. I think I said it right. I hope I said it right. But what can I say about
rigidity,
that?
I think you said it right. Rigidity.
Okay, I hope. But what I can say about this, and it kind of the first part I really agree with, because it reduce. I just have a hard time believing. I have some great people in my life, and I just have a hard time being like, I have to cut you off over that. I cut people off over being terrible people or doing sneaky, slimy stuff behind my back.
Right.
I just can't see myself, and everyone is different, cutting somebody off because they think differently when it comes to politics. Because at the end of the day, this is my stance. I think when people have a difference of opinions, we see them as the person on the platform, and it's like, they're not them. That's not Donald Trump. That's your cousin. You know what I mean? That's not Kamala Harris. That's your grandma. Like I think we see that person and we just allow our emotions to get the best of us. Now, here's where I can agree, playing devil's advocate against myself. If you are what's the one I'm looking for? Either either politician, especially Trump, if you are somebody who is just like obsessed and like bootlicking and just they can't do nothing wrong, and that's weird to me. Now that I was like, that's a little strange to me. But like, if you can, I have one homeboy. He's into politics. Like, he. I mean, I ain't saying who he is, so it's not like I'm telling him. He voted for. He definitely voted for Kamala, but he was also able to say that there are some things that Trump did that is not just everything ain't just terrible. He said he would have never voted for him, but there are some things he was able to say that he did this happened when this came up. Mm-hmm. So I was like, out of most people political people, with him, he's very like level headed. And I got another group of friends, a couple, they voted Kamala, but at the same time they weren't crying because she didn't win, because they said, I can't control that. Now of course I voted, but so many people they seemed possessed when I saw how he won again. And when he became president again, they almost like they wanted to just I don't know. It just seemed weird. Now, as someone who I know, you would have never voted for Trump if you probably would have set the pencil on fire. If you found out the person before you voted Trump with that pencil, you probably set it on fire. Do you feel as though you're very passionate about it? And I like when people are passionate about what they believe in, no matter if it's something I don't agree with or whatever. But when it comes to being passionate, when it comes to just the election, when it comes to all of that, did you honestly and truly, as a black man, feel more at peace when Joe Biden was president than Donald Trump? And if so, why?
It's a great question. I don't feel at peace ever in America. Okay. Period. Look, the political and the president and we all if you read, if you research, most of it is a pawn, right? There are people above the president, way more money, way more political status that we don't talk about, the untouchables, right? But nevertheless, what some things what Biden did. No, did we agree? I mean, sending all that money overseas to the Ukraine. Nobody saw any war devastation photos, or every time we saw a photo of Ukraine, that's the color buildings that they got. Very beautiful, very pretty. But that's the scenes we always see. We never see the destruction from the war and the bombs and Russia and this and that. Why are you sending all that money to all these different places, right? A lot of people didn't agree with that with Biden. But he was also trying to do other decent things. I didn't like the way Kamala Harris was used, because then when she tried to run, nobody even knew her stance on anything. She barely talked for the first 3 years while she was his VP. When certain issues, especially dealing with women or Black women in this country, or even Asian women, because she represents all of that, came up, she wasn't saying much, right? So there were things that you didn't agree with. But overall, was there more of a calm in the country? Sure, right? And it's always been that. It hasn't been this riled up, for a long time. I don't think, I can't recall really. Maybe during the Great Depression, when everybody was broke and something needed to change, right? And you had, people mad at Herbert Hoover and all of them, and FDR came in. But anyway, with Trump or being more peaceful, no. In this country, no president has fully helped the people. I laugh, white people, some white people who are still mad at Black people in this country. It's like, yo, y'all have had. Let me ask y'all something, white people. There's been how many presidents now? 48, 40, whatever the number is. How many of them were Black? One, and he was half Black. Okay, he was mixed. He wasn't a full nigga. All right, he was half. Okay. So that means y'all have had 40 something, 48 presidents, all white. And yet Black people and Latino people being in this country seems to be y'all problem. Like, certain things like that, I don't understand. Like, what, like, why why there is still such a hate, and animosity towards us. Oh, I get why. Because they put us through so much in this country, and we still progress. We are still here. We are still striving through the divides that they try to create through slavery, through all the different things throughout our history. But for Black people, especially since the 60s, when the whole political realm changed, when they started assassinating all those different people, when most of the coups in different countries, the CIA was running, all that started taking place, there has been no political peace, for Black people. There's been political progress and some of us getting in, especially, again, Obama becoming president. But after that, they said, hell no, we don't want no Black person to ever be president again, right? And so that's why they're setting things up the way that they are now. Oh no, there's been no peace. But nevertheless, during this past election, there was clear evidence that Trump was going to do the things that he has already done over the past year. There was clear evidence of that. And people chose to ignore. And I know you and I had a conversation about that. And you brought up the comment earlier in one of the statements I think that you made, and I think you were thinking that he was basically acting, and this was a joke. I'm paraphrasing, but maybe that's somewhat of what you were saying when we were talking about that. And I was like, no, like we have to believe people when they tell us who they are, right? Like, as much as, yes, social media there's a whole bunch of characters on social media. I get it. At the end of the day, what you say is important, like a Stephen A. Smith, right? Which, certain things that these Candace Owens, what you say out your mouth is still important. All right. You can't just say whatever and then just come around and say, oh, I was just playing, y'all. Like, this is a serious time. You can't be just playing with whatever you're saying. Especially if you are a prominent Black person in a position of media, you have a responsibility to, tell the truth, and yes, tell your truth. And if your truth doesn't align with the Black community and where we're trying to go and how we're trying to progress, then no, you don't, like, we don't have to follow you. We don't have to subscribe to you. That is a choice. Following someone and subscribing to someone is a choice. And if I or whomever don't believe with your political views, don't believe with your views on women, don't believe with your views on the elderly, don't believe with your views on Social Security, whatever the case may be, that might affect me and my family, right? I don't have to follow you. I don't have to subscribe to you. I've had, I had a situation where I unfollowed someone. And not to say that like we were
besties,
close, yeah, besties. It wasn't a situation like that. But it was a very specific conversation about a specific topic. And what surprised me, it was about the abortion and different things like that, and women having their rights. And why are we even having this conversation about women's rights? But whatever. But them having their rights, if they choose to have an abortion, especially in cases of sexual assault and different things like that. And this person has a daughter, all right, and he was very much pro Trump, and hey, no, like, and whatever. I forget this. Well, I won't say the state, but whatever those views were in that state, he was very much for, as far as like, no, women can't have abortions, not even with the exceptions of sexual assault or incest or what have you. And I was upset because, dude, you have a daughter, and he was going hard with, and I'm just like, I'm thinking to myself, let's say your daughter comes to you at 15. She wasn't sexually assaulted or a case of, she just happened to be promiscuous and had sex with a 16-year-old boy. But oh shit, she gets scared because now she's pregnant and doesn't want to have this child because she's a damn child herself, right? You mean to tell me you're gonna look your daughter in the eye and say, no, I don't agree with that. You're having this baby? Are you serious? I don't have children. I just can't imagine myself, not giving my child or my, whomever the choice or the right to do what they want with their own body and how they feel. Everybody feels. Everybody has emotions, even children. And so to take away rights like that, I just didn't agree with. So yes, that individual, I unfollowed that individual because I don't agree with that. And it was upsetting. It was very upsetting to have somebody within my circle, even though, again, we weren't besties, like you said, but just within my circle that felt that way. And listen, and there was other things too with that. It wasn't just specific.
That was the final straw.
Yeah. Basically, it was just like, that was just absolute. Yeah, that was the final straw, as you put it. But yeah.
Okay, let's move to the next segment because I have a lot to say. The next segment is man to man. So we're gonna cover a lot in this segment, I believe, because we already about an hour in, and I still got 2 more. This is the segment. Now
let's do it.
Let's do it. So you brought up the topic of abortion. Now here's the thing. Now we got to play devil's advocate here. So this is my stance. Now this is actually my stance, and it is devil's advocate. It's the both. So I guess I'm the devil right now. Now, when it comes to abortion, right, and people have their views on it, their take on it, and how they, all that good stuff. And of course, they'll say, as men, you don't have the right to speak on that because you're not a woman. This is my stance. And you made a point, and we gotta go there. We got to go there because I've heard stories about people who were promiscuous or had their first time and they got pregnant, and they end up, their parents was like, they came home, they said, oh no, you having that baby because you have to learn. People say, well, it's a child, and you put that child through all this. This is and I know there are people who grew up in poverty and they feel like they don't want to put no child through that and all this stuff. And I hear you when you say that because, at the end of the day, I have my views, but I'm I'm open to all perspectives, right? And things do happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what would have happened if hypothetically, I don't go to this church no more. This is my church I went to when I was in St. Louis, right?
Okay.
And my pastor, he was a rape baby. And so some people, and I remember my sixth grade teacher had these different scenarios. It was so crazy. She actually passed away last year. RIP to her. And I remember she had said, and she named a few different people, but she named when the past one, she was like, his mom was raped at 15. And what if she would have gotten an abortion? She would have never, just said, I'm not having that baby, got an abortion, never had the baby. She obviously did have the baby. He's a pastor. I think he's alive. I think he's actually close to, but this person in particular, and I know people have their views on church, but again, all of them ain't bad. All of them ain't. A lot of them, yeah, I ain't gonna lie, is one going crazy right now. That ain't one I support. But this man has been used to do so much for the community, so much, brought so many. Of course, he didn't bring them because he's used as a vessel, but brought so many people to Christ because of his yes and all these things. And so many things have happened wonderfully, not just in the church, but outside the church. But because God can use any situation. What if these situations that we think are the worst scenarios on earth are used to do so many things? You're very passionate. What if a baby that will come through the avenue of rape or early pregnancy? We don't want to keep going with rape because early pregnancy, say 14, 15, come through early pregnancy, and they are somebody who comes through guns blazing, and they are used to bring the Black community together. But that person was aborted because we say, well, she 15, she not ready. Now, I'm not arguing rape and molestation. I'm arguing 15, you ain't ready. Because I'm also of the thought of if you was out here doing it, you can take care of because you knew the consequences. So go ahead.
I got you. So here's the thing. It's about the choice. That's it. It's about having the choice. Now, unfortunately, that's unfortunate that happened to that lady, right? Especially at 15 or 8 point.
Right.
But ultimately, she had the choice to continue with the pregnancy, and she so chose to. That's it. We're just talking about the choice. We're not talking about, and I think that's what people forget in all of this. We're talking about the woman having the choice. She can choose to continue. That can very well be her choice. But it should also be her right or her choice to abort if she so chooses. You're absolutely right. There are plenty of people born out of those situations, unfortunately, or crack babies, or just different things that happen, unfortunately. But again, those people had, they made the choice. And yes, there are plenty of people who grow up to be prominent people and influence others and be great to the world or their community. And that's fine. Nobody's saying that, nobody's dismissing that. It's what I'm talking about. And I know what others talk about is the choice to make that decision that you just, with the scenario that you just brought up. That woman had a choice. That's what we're saying. Why is it a question about a woman having the choice? What far right people are saying is, no, a woman don't even get to have the right to. White men specifically are saying, no, I want to decide if I, a white man, if I assaulted my daughter or something crazy like that, I want to have the right to say, no, she has to have my baby. That's what their crazy asses are saying. You know what I mean? Like, so in that thinking, that's what I'm talking about. It's women having that choice. Again, it's sad that that's even a damn conversation. It's sad that was even a ruling in Poe versus Wade back in the set. That's sad that it had to even be let's decide if women are like that's absolutely insane. But that's what I'm talking about, man. It's just women having the choice, and if you choose to proceed, and that's your choice.
Now, I don't agree that they have then from that extreme case, I agree. Where it's like they saying no, I pick if they had a baby or not, right? Now that is extreme,
And
and
that's what they're talking about, though.
and
Izzy, that's what they're talking about.
from that angle, I do agree. But let me also add this, and not saying I agree, but there's sometimes when things are mishandled, some people come with extreme conditions. Now, hear me out, because I don't agree that is extreme. But when we look at the cases of abortions over the last 100, not 100, but a very long time, and even the reason abortion was started, and we look at our community specifically, where I know so many women who have been like, I didn't have about 5 abortions by that dude. And I'm not saying white women and Asian women, Hispanic ain't, but we talking about our people. And so many of them have gotten abortions like it's just like popping pills almost. And to me, that is just trifling. I don't care. I mean, I get things and happen, and one moment it slipped up, all right. But just how so many women brag about it, to me, is very strange. Do you think that those extreme white men saw those statistics and said, "No, y'all don't have the right no more because y'all just doing anything"? Do you think that that's where they're coming from, or do you think they're coming from the angle of I'm a white man, hear me roar?
I think it's coming from an angle where white men are afraid that they're losing superiority in this country. And the only way to continue that superiority and to make sure that your race continues is what, Izzy? Reproduction, period. All right. You have to keep, that's why they're upset that we're still around. How these, black people still coming together and having these black babies. Yeah, that's why, we're still here. Right. And white people fear that they are losing their position. It's, again, some white people, let me preface my comments. Some white people feel like they are losing their position in this country. And so, in losing numbers, right? And so, again, the only way to ensure that your race continues is through reproduction. And so, if these white women don't want to have babies, as statistics show, a lot of white women are not having children right now, right? Or waiting until they're damn near 40, 45, 50 years old to finally have their first child. That scares the hell out of them, not us, right? Like for us, yeah, they're happy that black women are having abortions. That means less black babies in the world. And so from that standpoint, that's disheartening. But at the same time, I'm just about a person having the choice, period. And no matter what it is, imagine you wake up and this government tells you, Izzy, you can't have your podcast on any platform. We're not giving you the choice. You would be fucking pissed, especially if it's making you money. Hell yeah, you would be pissed, right? And so, for I mean, that's just an example, but imagine if all of our choices were, our everyday choices were up for, like, we don't have that anymore. Like that's not cool, right? Like freedom is key. We weren't put on this earth to be locked down and chained down, and like that's not the intention of people here. And so yeah, I'm just about, like I said, I'm just about women having a choice. But with white men, no, I mean, sure, they're happy that black women are aborting black babies, but it's really about white women aborting white babies and not reproducing at the clip that they need to for white people to continue their superiority in this country.
Okay. All right. So now what I want to say, we're gonna get off that because we didn't talk enough about that. What I will say is a lot of times with a lot of these different topics and things that are being pushed, I always know for a fact that there's a reason for it behind the scenes and that most people can't see. Now, when it comes to being black and making everything about being black, do you think that at times that can be unhealthy?
By making everything black?
Yes.
Oh, so like if a coach gets fired and he's a black coach, oh, you fired him because he's a black. You talking about like something like that?
Yeah.
No, because again, it's historically this country has been race has been a hot topic in this country, which white people, this white administration in particular, is trying to eliminate from schools. Right, Black history is not even taught in most schools. Right, you have to literally go to a university at this point in a HBCU to learn Black history, right, or do the research yourself. They are literally trying to make sure that we don't know, our history, right, and where we stand. And so, I'm sorry, Izzy, tell me the question one more time, man. My mind just be.
I was just saying, no, you fine. I was just more so you answered. I was like, do you think that we can, as Black people, sometimes we can make being Black everything about being Black?
Right. Make everything. Yeah. Again, it's instilled in this country that most of the things that white people put out is about making sure that we don't know their part in all of this. Their in most cases, their violence in all of this, their greed in all of this, right? And keeping Black people down, especially because they know, genetics show that we are that species, right? We are, that race, which a lot of people don't know, and white people are trying to challenge that in every way possible. Again, even with the, Jesus is white. The highest of highest is white, right? So that has to be superiority. But yeah, you have to make everything Black. For example, I brought up the coaches, like in sports right now. Raheem Morris, shout out to Raheem Morris from Jersey. But after 2 seasons with the Atlanta Falcons, gets fired. Now, I say that to say, yeah, everybody's like, oh, he got 2 seasons, but most Black coaches, especially in professional sports, are only given a short period of time. They're given a bad team with no good players, no quarterback, whatever the case may be, and told to turn that around within a year or 2. Those same expectations aren't given to white head coaches. And so, yeah, like you have to look at that and go, well, why is most white head coaches that expectation is not given? And some of them are still performing poorly after 5 seasons with the team, but you only given a Black head coach 1 season to turn it around. That's saying something there. How we are paid in the workplace, right? We might have the same you and I might have the same education, but because you are white, you get paid, $1,000 more, whatever the case may be. So race is engraved within this country. It's engraved in everything from politics to sports to music to movies to film to the workplace, wherever you work. And so, yeah, that's a fair point that every Black person has to consider in most situations, unfortunately.
Now, I do agree that as a Black man, we can't react the same way as someone else can, right? So, like, if we are,
well, we can, but it's gonna be different consequences for us.
Right. So we can't lash out, because if we do, then it's gonna look like, oh, here he go, he's being him. Okay, Tyrone, you're going to, you're taking us to Compton and things like that. Now, let me ask you this, because we got to go there. As a race, do we unintentionally and intentionally sometimes reinforce the stereotypes that are put on us?
Yeah. The stereotype, the most, what is it? The Black people like watermelon. Hell yeah, we're gonna eat some damn watermelon and fried chicken.
Watch and right. Then watch this, and I'm gonna take it there too. If you see a bunch of young YNs with some Pooh Shiesty mask on, you're not gonna be like, oh, here come my brothers. You're gonna be like, what y'all on? You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, yeah, especially coming down the street and as a group or something like that. Yeah.
I don't want to touch on this part too much because it's about politics and we already but entertainment has a lot to do with that. It once again reinforces, and on the positive side, it reinforces the impact that we have, but it just, unfortunately, we're doing it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so now we're not gonna really talk about this too much, but I know you heard about the Diddy documentary.
Oh yeah, watched it.
And oh, you watched it? Okay. I think it was put together very well. By the way. Now I was watching it with someone who's very analytical, I guess. That's the word.
Okay,
I'll give him that. I'll give him that.
okay,
And he made a comment saying, talking about it. He said, but in the same breath, this is another, media exploitation or however he worded it of the takedown of a black man. And I said, okay, see, this is my thing with that. Maybe I'm a coon because the next person I bring up, I already know you're going to call him that. This is my take on that. We as a community, sometimes I think and I agree, we got to protect our people, but some people can't be protected, in my opinion, because
that's a
in
fact.
his case, he does so much. Again, you always get away with it the first few times, but when you don't stop and you think you're untouchable, I don't care what your race is, you have to learn the consequences. And I'm all for consequences. Sometimes you know what you got to deal with the consequences because grace ran out.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you believe that this was another that we should have? I mean, we all know he had monstrous moments, but do you really believe that the whole aspect of like, well, it's still another, we're watching the downfall of another black man? What's your take on that?
Well, for one, for everybody coming at 50 Cent, and I'm not the biggest 50 Cent fan, other than the fact that he and I are both cancers. But for everybody coming at 50, there's been plenty of Diddy documentaries before 50 put out his on other platforms. I saw one on Tubi, saw one on Hulu, saw one on Peacock, I believe, as well. It's been plenty, all right, those were produced by and directed by white people. But nobody said anything then, right? It's only because a black man is coming after another black man where we have an issue. But I'm of the mindset of expose them all, especially during this time. Cat Williams set it off last year, right? Or 2 years ago, whenever that was. But expose them all. We need to know, right, what's going on with our black prominent people, right? As far as with Diddy, a lot of people don't know Biggie. Rest in peace, Biggie. He's my favorite MC of all time to this day. All right, and I feel like his obviously his potential and everything was cut short. I always had a thing about that, and a lot of that stuff in the documentary. If you follow Bad Boy, Biggie, all that stuff, you already knew, right? You already knew about City College incident. It was other couple of things that were fairly new. You already knew about him and Biggie, the jealousy of Tupac, not to that extent. That was some new stuff in there, but most of that stuff you already knew. I didn't know about all the freak offs him and Cassie was having, with the Esco, all that stuff. But nevertheless, this is a person, to your point, Izzy, that has done a lot of bad things, all right? And it finally caught up to him, right? For him to only get 2 years for all the stuff that he's done to women, to his artists, to please, right? But if he was a white man, i.e. Harvey Weinstein, saying the same thing. Yeah, because I saw his documentary too. That man was doing that back in Syracuse where he went to college. All right, Harvey Weinstein started sexually assaulting women, right? Like that had been going on for a long. All of that needs to be exposed. You are doing dirt, right? In this, towards women, towards children, making shisty and greedy and corrupt business moves, stealing money from people. All these different things that needs to be exposed right now, all right? And we need to stop supporting people who are causing harm and damage to the community as a whole. And when I say community, Diddy caused a lot of harm and damage to a lot of black artists, right? His own people, right? Like that's not okay. Period. It's not okay. Yeah. So, yeah.
So what is your take? So we look at Diddy getting into, not Diddy, 50, even though it's still entertainment, but getting into documentaries and things. I mean, he already conquered music. Then he conquered, what's the word for it? We'll just say TV shows. I can't think of the proper word right now. But then he did moving in documentaries. So what is your take when artists, especially music artists, decide to speak on politics?
again, like I said earlier, we all have an opinion about everything. All right. Now, you may not pay attention to it, and so you don't feel like you should have opinion, right? But everybody has the right to pay attention to whatever they want to pay attention to and have a perspective on whatever they want to have a perspective on. If Izzy, if you don't watch sports, okay, I'm pretty sure you're not going to give a perspective on sports, and that's fine, right? Like I don't watch anime, so I'm not gonna give you a perspective on cosplay and anime, and I just don't have that perspective. Um, but if I so choose to, have that perspective, like I do on, I don't know, Marvel or whatever, I can speak on that because I watch Marvel movies and I have a perspective. Same thing with politics, right? We can all have our views, whether you are a billionaire or, just your average Joe, because politics affects everybody differently, right? But it still affects everybody. it just might affect you in a different light. So you're going to have a different position on it. I don't expect me and LeBron James to have the same political standpoint. Number one, because politics is primarily it's about the finances. It's about money. Let's be real. So he's going to have a totally different perspective on and see politics from a different standpoint than myself, who, is your average Joe. Mm-hmm.
What about you and Nicki Minaj?
Her, those are easy. Her, Nelly, Snoop Dogg, they all had certain things that, that needed to be expunged or, or removed or covered up. All right. And they're not the only ones. But in Nicki's case, that's the way I see it. She definitely used the Black community to gain her wealth. All right. And we chose to listen to her music. Everything is a choice. All right. And now she is choosing to take the standpoint and spew those views that she's spewing to the UN about Africa, about these different things, in her support of Trump and MAGA. And, again, yeah, we got a choice who we listen to. We have a choice on her and others. There was something else. There was another factor that was in place, other than just her all of a sudden or all along loving Trump. I think there's other financial factors in place with people like her and Snoop Dogg and others. A financial or, again, certain things with certain, about expunging records, then you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I said this on my live stream, and I'll say it again here before we move to the final segment. If you are doing something with the intent, with backhanded or like with secret motives, it'll always be revealed. Mm-hmm. I'm the type, because I've done things, obviously not that, but I've done things where people thought I had an ulterior motive and it came out I was telling the truth the whole time. So only time will tell. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt until proven guilty, just because I know what that's like. But I would hope that she's doing it for the right reasons. And if not, it'll all come out, because guess what? That ain't my homegirl, no lady. All right, let's move to the final segment for today, which is the weekly sabbatical. So this episode has went on very long. I didn't think it was going to go on this long, so I apologize because I didn't want to have you this. I know you got things to do, but
good.
I saw a podcast clip. Do you know who Myron Gaines is?
Myron Gaines. Name sounds familiar, but name does sound familiar though.
The not black, because I'm about to say something. He's not black. He was, but and I hate that because I'm saying that, but what he said, I was kind of like, So he's not black. The Fresh and Fit podcast.
Fresh and Fit. I've heard of that.
It's the guys. It's a black guy, and then it's Myron. Myron is not black. I don't know what he is, but he uses the N-word a lot. I don't like that. I have a major problem with that. He's one of those people I feel like he does that stuff for the camera, and if you met him in real life, he would be like,
is he white? I mean, or is he
no, he's
like
not white. He's like
Hispanic or something?
I don't want to be on here and they try to cancel, but he ain't black. He's like, I don't want to say he's not Hispanic, but it's like,
well, if you're not black or Latino, at least no, there's no excuse for him to be using that word, and no excuse for us to really be using it either. But it comes out. But yeah.
So, well, it's another thing I'm gonna say, but I'm gonna say that off camera. I can't say that now. But so it was an interview. It was and it's on his page because I follow him because I thought he turned over a new leaf because it was some things he was saying I was agreeing with.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, I didn't like the beginning, but I ain't gonna lie, that towards the end, I was like, So it was this white lady, and she said, it pissed me off too. She said, what's worse for this country, fentanyl or black people? And he said, black people, because of the music. He said, because of black on black crime. And he said, what else did he say? But he was naming all these things that black people do. And I was just like, and I paused for a minute. But then it made me, that's why I asked that question earlier about the Pooh Shiesty mask. Because I said, if you see a group of them outside, what you gonna do? Because I'm the ones that stole my car some months ago, a month ago. I don't have proof of who it was, but I mean, I got my car back. It's undrivable. But yeah, they stole my car a month ago because in my apartment complex, huh?
I said, sorry to hear that. That's crazy.
And that's a story too. That's a story testimony coming. I'm gonna tell you that is later too. But yeah, so but I say he was saying something. I gotta relook at the video, and realistically, what I wish I would have did was put the video in this conversation, so you could saw everything. But when you hear statements like that, and in the comments, a lot of people saying, "Is he black?" But I know he's not black. But when you hear comments like that, how does it make you feel? And do you feel as though these people unfortunately have a point in some areas?
I'm curious to hear what his black co-host has to say.
Well, he wasn't there. It was just they just asked Myron, and I'm gonna send you. I'm gonna send it to you.
But he uses the N-word frequently in front of his black co-host.
Yes,
that's a little suspect already.
Right.
But yeah, fentanyl or black. So that's what it's come to. Fentanyl or black people, right? Dogs or black people, or what? You know, that's ridiculous. Black on black crime and this and that. First of all, with crime, okay, there's always going to be white people committing more crime in this country because statistically, the numbers show there are more white people in this country than black people. Black people, remember, we only make up now about 11% of the population, maybe 10. It's decreased actually. Where the Latino community is up, I think, to like 15-16% right now. So that whole black on black crime and sure, like come on, man. Like the most dangerous town is a town, I believe, in Alabama, where police don't even go out at night. Like what? And they want to always say Baltimore or St. Louis or a Kansas City or whatever are the worst as far as, you know, crime. I think all of that is just propaganda. He's going based upon propaganda, just like most white people do, right? I had a white person literally tell me he listens to Candace Owens, and so he knows everything about black people. Like, it's like, and so I would ask that individual, like, where are you getting these statistics from? Or where are you getting that knowledge from to make you spew out, that it's black on black crime and it's our music? First of all, if whatever music white people listen to comes from black people, all music comes from black people, rock music, country music, those are our most popular forms of, genres of music, right? Country, rock, pop. Black people invented that or made it pop. Who's the king of pop? Michael Jackson. Like, you know what I mean? Who's the best guitarist of all time? Jimi Hendrix. All right. Like, country we did it all right. So but people spew that like this individual, not knowing that, right? So there's the ignorance. There's a, again, you have to immediately go to, oh, you've heard some type of propaganda in your life, or seen it or whatever, and then you spew that. When those aren't facts, it's just not. Like black on black crime. Yeah, it's a thing. Things happen, sure, but it's not at the rate as white on white crime. All right. Let me ask you, Izzy, if you watch Netflix or Hulu and they have those documentaries or limited series about, those American families, and the husband done killed somebody, or the wife done killed somebody for money, or the husband done, what race is that normally?
Not black.
Okay. So if most of that, if we seeing that kind of, like every time I watch Forensic Files or something like that, they talking about white people. Where are all these black cases that, since all of this black on black crime happens all the time, where's all the black cases? What's happening there? What I do know what's happening is our black children are getting kidnapped at an alarming rate. All right, that's crime right there. Who knows who's committing that crime? All right, and also white people. You want to talk about black on black crime? How about white on black crime? Like, come on now, like, just certain things like that. And then for this person to not be white, it just shows where your alliance is, and as far as your thinking is concerned, But again, he has the choice to say what he wants to say. Now, does that make him right? Do I have to support and follow that person? No, and neither do you, or neither does anybody else. And that black co-host, again, that's interesting that you would allow that to continue and not correct that and not stop. That also shows where your thinking aligns as well. Because I'd be damned if I have a co-host who is not black spew nigger with the or whatever. Yeah.
I don't play that. I don't like that at all. And I've noticed non-blacks, not white, but non-blacks, especially living in Texas. Not all of them. I'm not around them often, but I've even been places where they saying it every other word, and I'm like, you saying it more than me. What's going on here? Like, what? Why are you? So I'm gonna get out your way because you tripping. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you doing? Like, why do you think that's okay? And maybe we should make this a clip. Non-blacks, why do you all feel so comfortable saying the N word every other word? I really want to know, like, what is in your mindset? It's okay to do this, because I had a homegirl say she's very analytical. She said I might not get mad, but I'm going to ask, like, why do you feel okay doing saying that? Like, what in your mind says this is okay? That's all I want to know. She said that's all I want to know. Why? Just I want to hear like the breakdown.
And is it real quick? It's a lot of that's to do with our culture and our influence on culture as well, right? You speak upon music and rappers continuing to use the word, like white people listen to our music, like they had the headsets on and they recite the music, and every other word might be nigga, right? Especially Drake and all these artists, popular artists use that term. It's also just because they want to use it, and think that's, by us hearing it, it's subconsciously beating us down, as well. They want to use it so bad, like Delroy Lindow told the TV show, go ahead, say it. You want to say it? Say it. You want to say it so bad. If it's going to make you feel so much better saying that word, say it. But at this point, for black people, yeah, as much as that still gets us hot, you have to be like, look, like, they're trying to provoke us.
Yeah.
And we have to recognize that and go, no, you're not gonna do that to me. Now, yes, I'm gonna correct you and say you shouldn't say that. You want to say it so bad, say it. That shit, like, I'm honestly, I'm not going to say I wouldn't correct the right person, but if I heard it, I would just be looking at it like laughing. Like you that's the only thing you have to say. Calling me a nigger, that's the only thing you have.
Yeah.
You can't beat my ass. You're not going to try to fight. You're not, just like you said, right? He not going to say that stuff. This whole podcast, so he's not going to say that stuff outside on the street to go walk up to go to a gym where there's a whole bunch of big ass black dudes just working out and say that to them. Please, like, come on, stop it. You know, like it's all talk. It's all, you know, like it's all talk, man.
As we wind down today, I brought up about groupthink, and we've had different points where we spoke on the Bible, and sometimes people say, believers and people should just stay out of politics, but there are actually biblical evidence of people who got involved in politics. So Daniel in Babylon, Daniel 6:1-10, it says he served under multiple kings and governments, yet he refused to compromise his convictions to fit political pressure.
Okay.
Then we have Esther advocating within power. This is Esther 4:14-16. She used her position inside a political system to advocate for her people, even at personal risk. Then, of course, one of my favorites, Joseph governing Egypt, Genesis 41:39-41. He was given authority to manage national resources during a crisis. The point that he made, it says, God places someone in political leadership is not condemned. Misuse of power is. And then the other one is Paul to the Roman law, Acts 25:10-11. Paul used his legal right as a Roman citizen to protect himself and advance his mission. So again, when it comes to politics, I'm a firm believer that you don't necessarily have to be in a position, but we can still be in positions. And it's not like we need to stay out of that because of whatever we believe in. We should still be a part of it. It's just you may not be a person who, will be, running for nothing. But at least I tell people all the time, be aware of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The second half of that is not following the crowd, because sometimes I'm a firm believer that when everyone is pushed on a world stage to hate somebody, I just feel like it's something behind the scenes that they're doing that must be right that we don't see.
Gaddafi in Libya.
So it's something you're doing that's right that we're not seeing. So one of the most prominent ones is the golden calf in Exodus 32:1-4. The people collectively demanded an idol because Moses was delayed. Then it says the crowd chose Barabbas. Matthew 27:23. The crowd rejected Jesus and demanded Barabbas and said, and this one I like because it says majority opinion does not equal moral truth. And this is my favorite one as we close out. False prophets in agreement in 1 Kings 22:6-8. 400 prophets agreed with the king. There was one prophet who spoke the truth and was hated for it, but he was the only one that told the truth. So just because everyone hates what you're saying does not mean that you're wrong. But in the same breath, we go to the first half, it just, you have to really be, of course, solidify and know your relationship with God and know what God told you, but also just going off of values and facts to say, okay, I'm going against the grain, but that just because 400 people said that I'm wrong doesn't mean that I'm wrong. So I think that's something to keep in mind as we close out today. And so the question or challenge for the week is, what is your take on these politics? Just in general, politics in general, do you think people should vote? Do you think they should only, I know some people say they don't vote mainstream, but they vote locally because they feel like what you said, which we really didn't go into, but I agree. I think there's going to have to be a part two at some point, but the president is a pawn. And in my opinion with Donald Trump, I believe, I don't agree with everything he does, clearly, but I believe he's going against the grain of what they want him to do. I feel like he's a loose cannon. That's the thing. He's a loose cannon, and you don't know what he's going to do, and that's why all this stuff is happening the way it is. But we had a great episode. Anything else you want to add, promote, or say before we go today?
I know, man. Just again, greatly appreciate you having me on, Izzy, as always. Yes, this is definitely a great conversation. And again, HL Podcast will be back on January 20th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 Central. And support the page at the Real AmRock HL. And yeah, man, definitely appreciate this. Is always fun and love to be back.
All right. The good stuff. All right. Next week, y'all, is the season finale. So make sure y'all tune in. Thank you for pulling up on us today. PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are. Make your mind up. Don't let it make you. And always remember, I love us for real.